Hello guys, welcome to Blender Tunes 3D. In this video I'm gonna show you how to create this low poly scene in Blender, and without any further delay let's get started. Here I'm gonna delete my default light in the scene, we'll add it later, and I'm also enabling my screencast keys. You can follow from here and selecting the default cube, scaling it on y-axis. Further press S along with Y to scale it on y-axis and scaling it on x-axis and scaling it on z-axis. And I'm gonna move this object above the grid for the G to grab and J to move on direction, and I'm placing here. Now in order to edit this mesh we need to get into edit mode. For that you can just click here and change this mode to edit mode, or else you can just press tab on your keyboard. Now adding a loop cut, for that press Ctrl R, and here I'm changing the number of cuts to 2, adjusting this vertex on y-axis. Now I'm gonna select this face. For that selecting the face selection and selecting this face, E to extrude and S to scale. Here we need a more slope on front window. For that going to edge selection and selecting this edge and press Alt Shift in order to select all the edges. Now Z on y-axis, and now going to object mode and scaling it a little bit on x-axis. Now it looks good. Now changing it to object mode, and on the next part we are going to add a windows here. If you see, we need to add 2 windows here. For that I'm going to add a loop cut, Ctrl R. If you see here, the loop cut is not straight, it makes a bend over here. In order to make it straight, press S along with Y and press 0 on your numpad to scale it on 0, and this makes a straight line. And I'm gonna add another loop cut and moving it close to the another loop, and now selecting these faces by using the face selection mode by holding on with shift. Now we need to insert these faces. For that press I. If you see here, it will make a connection between 2 faces and making insertion according to it. In order to make individual insertion, press I again. Here you can see it makes an individual insert, and it not looks good because we need to add a scale, apply a scale for it. Go to object mode, Ctrl A, apply the scale. Now again enter into the edit mode, and if you try to now insert and press I again to make individual insert, and now it looks good. Then we need to extrude these faces. For that, if you right click here, you can see extrude faces along normals. I'm gonna do inwards extrude, and if you see here, it makes a windows. And now we're gonna add a wheels here. For that we need to make a cut here, and for that I'm adding a cylinder and rotate on y-axis. For that press R along with Y and press 90 on your numpad to rotate on 90 degrees. S to scale, S along with X to scale it on x-axis, and again scaling it a little bit and moving Z on y-axis, scaling down Z to z-axis and placing at the place of wheel, and now it looks good. Now in order to make a mirror of it, Ctrl A and apply all transforms. Now if you try to make a mirror modifier, it will perfectly do. Now mirror modifier, and now it looks good. And I need on y-axis as well. For that press Y. Now select these objects first and then object where we need to cut the object next, and press N. If you see here, there is a edit option and the bool tool. If you do not find this bool tool, go to edit, preferences, add-ons, and type the bool tool here. Enable this, and now I'm gonna apply a difference modifier, difference boolean. Here you can see the cut over here, and now pressing N to close this panel, Shift A, adding another cube and changing the vertices to 16, rotating it on y-axis 90 degrees, scaling it down, scaling on x-axis, now Z on x-axis, and you can see if you cannot view the cut, so for that click here, add a cavity to hit both, and here you can see there is a cut, and now scale Z on y-axis, scale it down, Z on z-axis, Z on y-axis, adjust here, and now I'm gonna apply mirror modifier for it. For that, select the object and Control A, all transforms, select the object, Control A, all transforms. Now apply mirror modifier along on y-axis. Now if you edit this object, it will reflect on every mirror object. Now select this object, press tab, select the face, I to insert, E to extrude on inside, and again I to insert, extrude outwards, and now selecting the face by faces, again E to extrude a little bit, and that's it. And now go to edge mode, select this object, select this edge, scale it on x-axis and Z on z-axis. Now it looks good. And that's it. And now we're gonna add a lights and number plate. For that, add a cylinder, scaling it down, rotate on y-axis, press 90, rotate on z-axis 90, and I'm gonna place it here, scaling it Z, and I'll place it here. Again Control A, all transforms, apply mirror modifier, add a cube, scale it down, scale on x-axis, and I'll place it here. And now adding a number plate. For that, I am going to duplicate this object, Shift T, Z on z-axis, scaling on x-axis, scaling a little bit, and now it looks good. Again I am duplicating these objects and adding it on back, Shift T, Z on y-axis. Now I'm gonna duplicate this object and I'll place it as a lights. Control A, all transforms, mirror modifier, and we need to add a text here. For that, Shift A and text. I'll move it. If you want to edit this text, press tab and you can add a text here, and you can change these fonts, extrudes, and like that. Here you can see there's a text properties. Here if you see there's a font, here you can change the font. I am gonna select this font and you can extrude this and scaling it down, G to grab, and I'll place it here. Z on Z axis, R to rotate, and now I'm gonna adding a cube here and scaling it down. Z on Y axis and scale on Z axis and moving it a little bit, and I'm rotating this. And that's it. Now the car has completed, and I'm making this a new collection. For the press M and new collection and enter your collection name. And okay, here you can see I have already created a collection car, and I'm gonna select all these and hide. The next one is to add a road, grass and trees. For that I'm gonna add a plane here, scaling and scale on x-axis. Here I'm gonna use this plane as a road and for grass. For that I'm gonna separate this object. Now selecting the object, changing the edit mode, Ctrl R to add a loop cut, and now by using the face selection, selecting the face. If you press P, you can separate this by using selection or by materials or by loose parts. For that I'm gonna separate this plane by selection. Now if we change this mode into object mode, here you can see it's got separated as two objects. Now I'm gonna select this, and here I'm adding a road lines here. See, and I'll place it here and adding a array modifier. Now I'm making this as a road collection, and I'm gonna hide this. And next one is to add a grass. You can directly use a particles for low poly. Here I'm gonna select this, and here and assigning a particles and selecting hair, advanced. If you see here at bottom there is a physics, and you can change these straight lines into your cars, and I'm gonna reduce the hair length here. And that's it. Here I'm also changing the numbers to 5000. Here if I change this to viewport, here you can see in cycles the particles has added a thickness to it, so you can use as a grass on low poly. And next one, here I'm making a collection as grass. I'm gonna hide this, and next one is to make a trees, and for that I'm adding a cylinder and changing this to edit mode, selecting this face, Z on Z axis and scaling it down. I'm gonna add a loop cuts 4, and I'm gonna add another loop cut, scaling it down, Z on Z axis, and I'm repeating this process. I'm gonna scale on Z axis, and now adding another cylinder and scaling it down, scaling on Z axis, C on Z axis. And now I'm gonna select this tree and going to edit mode and selecting this for text selections. And here you can see there is a select. You can select by random, and I'm moving this on Z axis to provide some little bit zigzagness. And now I'm gonna make a collection as trace, and I'm gonna hide this. And next one is to add a street lights. For those, I'm adding a cube, scaling on Y axis, going to edit mode, select the face selection, E to extrude, scaling a little bit and adding a loop cut here, and face selection, selecting this face, E to extrude, C on Z axis, and again E to extrude a little bit on Z axis. Now I'm gonna select this face and E to extrude to add a light here, some emission part, and making a collection as lamps, street lamps. And now I'm gonna hide this and undo all by pressing Alt H. And now I'm gonna place this in their positions, see, and I'll place it over here, scaling on little bit on Z axis. And making a duplicate of this by using Shift D and scaling it on Z, scaling on Z axis, and again duplicating this object, Shift D and scaling it down. Again duplicates. Alt H, and now street lamps, Shift D on Y axis, Shift D on Y axis, and I'm gonna add another cube here to make it separate, Shift D, scale on Y axis. And this is all about modeling, and in the next video we'll go with how to add a colors, lights and textures, and how to render it.